I'll make you a deal. You meet me for coffee. For just 1 hour. She raised an eyebrow. Why? Curiosity. I'm not trying to date you, if that's what you're thinking. She blinked, mildly surprised by his honesty. He added, and I'm not trying to poach your company. I just want to talk. 1 hour. No contracts. No money. No agenda. She studied him for a long beat, then shrugged. Fine. 1 hour. Before we dive into this interesting story, kindly hit the subscribe button to support and encourage us, then sit back and enjoy the story. Thank you. 2 days later at Cafe Neo, Victoria Island. Vanessa arrived 5 minutes early. He arrived 10 minutes late. You're consistent, she said as he sat. And you're punctual. Boring trait, he replied. The conversation started stiff. Political at first, about Lagos traffic, corruption, zoning regulations. But then something shifted. He mentioned growing up in Surulere before Banana Island. She laughed. I thought you were born in marble and gold. No. My father ran a block-making business. Taught me how to mix cement before I could spell estate. She paused. So what changed? I did. He asked about her childhood. Her father's work on public infrastructure in the 90s. How she had to take over bills when he died during her first year in university. I hated math, she said. But I learned to calculate everything. Rent, transport, survival. They talked for more than an hour. No flirting. No seduction. Just two people with nothing to prove, probing each other's beliefs. And for the first time in years, Damien didn't feel like the smartest person at the table. When they stood to leave, she said, You're not entirely horrible. He grinned. High praise. But I still don't like what you represent. Maybe I'll change. Maybe pigs will fly. She turned to go, but paused. And if you ever offer to help my community projects, I'll drag you on Twitter. He laughed, this time, for real. That night, Banana Island. Damien sat on his balcony, the city glowing beneath him. For the first time in months, his thoughts weren't about profit margins or construction permits. They were about her. Vanessa. She wasn't trying to be difficult. She just was, like Lagos traffic or rainy season or stubborn soil. Impossible to control, but impossible to ignore. And that was new. He had power, wealth, and influence. But none of that mattered to her. And somehow, that made him want her more. Not to possess. Not to conquer. But to understand. Something in him, something deep, unnameable, was stirring. And he didn't know yet if that was dangerous or the beginning of something real. 3 weeks had passed since their coffee at Cafe Neo, and Vanessa hadn't heard a word from Damien. Good. She didn't need distractions. Urban Nest had just secured its biggest contract yet, a $250 million urban redesign project for a pilot low-income housing scheme in Mushin. The Lagos state government had finally agreed to back the plan without kickbacks, without shady deals, and Vanessa was determined to make it a benchmark for ethical development in Nigeria. But she knew the vultures would circle. They always did. Especially once the money started moving. So when her assistant Rachel rushed into her office one Tuesday morning, looking pale and panicked, Vanessa already felt the dread rising. "Madam," Rachel said, "there's a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Land dispute." Vanessa's heart dropped. "Where?" "Mushin. Block 3A. The biggest parcel. Some company called Zenith Grove Properties just submitted a claim of ownership to the ministry." Vanessa stiffened. She didn't recognize the name, but she recognized the game. It was too soon. Too strategic. "Who owns Zenith Grove?" Rachel looked down at her tablet. "It's a shell company, but I traced the parent ownership." She hesitated. "Say it." "Sir Damien Adeyemi. He incorporated it last week." Damien didn't answer her first call. Or her second. But when she showed up at his office the next morning without an appointment, She was let in within 5 minutes. His assistant looked slightly terrified. He was behind his desk, immaculate as always, signing documents with a Montblanc pen. He looked up, unsurprised. "Vanessa," he said, "you didn't text." She didn't sit. "You're trying to sabotage my project." He capped his pen, leaned back. "I'm securing a high-potential land asset. That's business. That's predatory. It's legal. But wrong." He tilted his head, studying her. "You think morality belongs in real estate? I think it belongs everywhere." Their eyes locked. The tension between them had changed. Less playful, more electric. She was furious. He was unreadable. "You waited until we broke ground. You timed it." "I did." "Why?" "Because I wanted to see how much it matters to you." She blinked, stunned. "This is some kind of test?" "It's a challenge," he said quietly. "You're trying to prove you can build clean in a dirty system. I'm showing you what the system really looks like." She laughed bitterly. "No, you're protecting it." "No, I'm challenging it. I'm challenging you." He stood now, walked around the desk, slow and deliberate. "You walk into slums and think heart is enough. It's not. You need power. You need leverage. You need to understand how the game works before you can change it." She folded her arms. "And you think you can teach me?" "I think I already have." For a moment, there was silence. Then she shook her head. "I'm not your project, Damien. I'm not something you get to mold or test or push to breaking point." He reached into a drawer, pulled out a brown envelope, and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. "Proof I already started withdrawing Zenith Grove's claim. You'll have your land back in 48 hours. She opened it. Legal documents. Signed. Sealed. Her eyes narrowed. "Then why the stunt?" "Because I wanted to know if you'd fight me," he said. "And if I hadn't, then you wouldn't be the woman I thought you were." That night at Vanessa's apartment, she couldn't sleep. Anger simmered beneath her skin. She wasn't sure what bothered her more, that he'd tested her like she was an experiment, or that some twisted part of her respected the way he did it. He didn't lie. He didn't manipulate behind her back. He challenged her to her face. It was toxic. It was arrogant. It was maddening. But it was honest. And that scared her more than anything. Because honesty like that came with a strange kind of intimacy. He saw her. And she didn't want to admit it. But she saw him too. 2 weeks later, land auction at Victoria Island. The Lagos State Land Reform Commission was auctioning 12 parcels near the waterfront. Everyone in the industry wanted in. Vanessa wasn't bidding, but she was consulting for one of the bidders, an environmental non-profit trying to secure land for a public park. She was at the event to help them make the case. And so was Damien. He spotted her from across the room. She was in a tailored navy suit, hair pulled back, fierce and composed. He walked over. "You're not bidding?" "No," she said. "Just keeping vultures away from public spaces." "Careful. That sounds like slander. If the shoe fits." They stood side by side, facing the podium as the bidding began. Tension hummed between them like electricity. "Dinner," he said quietly. She didn't look at him. "No. I'm not playing games. Just dinner. No schemes." "Why?" "Because I respect you." She finally turned. "You don't know me. I'm learning." Another silence. Then, "You like power, don't you?" He nodded. "Yes. Even when you pretend you're giving it up." "I don't pretend. I offer. What people do with it is their business." She looked at him, then away. "You scare me, Damien." He blinked. "Not because you're ruthless," she added. But because I don't know if you actually want to change, or if you just want me to change you." He didn't have a response. Not immediately. But the look on his face bare, for just a second, wasn't his usual armor. It was something else. Maybe even fear. Later that week, dinner at Knock by Alara. She showed up. He booked a private courtyard table. No assistants. No pitch decks. Just jollof quinoa, grilled catfish, and slow conversation. And this time, she asked him the questions. "Have you ever been in love?" He didn't answer immediately. "Yes," he finally said. "Once. University." She left. Said I was too cold. Too focused. What happened to her? She's a surgeon in Canada now. Married. 2 kids. And you? I built a fortress. She didn't respond. Just nodded. Then asked, "Why me?" He met her gaze. "Because you challenged the part of me that thought it couldn't be challenged." The next morning, Vanessa woke up to a strange ache in her chest. She'd spent the entire night replaying their conversation. The way Damien's voice dropped when he talked about the woman he lost. The crack in his armor when he said, "I built a fortress." That wasn't a line. It was a confession. She didn't trust easily. Years in development work had taught her to doubt promises, especially ones made by men with tailored suits and glass offices. But something about Damien Adeyemi was changing. And the scariest part? So was she. Banana Island. That same morning, Damien stood at his office window, overlooking the ocean. For the first time in months, his calendar was empty. He'd canceled 2 board meetings, ignored 4 calls from his CFO, and postponed a scheduled trip to Dubai for a property acquisition. He wasn't distracted. He was focused. But not on buildings. Not on profit. On her. It made no sense. She didn't need him. She challenged him, insulted him, even refused his help. And yet, every interaction left him starving for more. Not because she stroked his ego, but because she didn't. She didn't care who he was. And that was the most intoxicating thing of all. He pulled out his phone and sent her a message. "Damien, come to the site in Ikoyi this Saturday. I want you to see something. No strings. Just come." She read it instantly, but didn't reply. Saturday at Ikoyi waterfront. She came. Jeans. Sneakers. Minimal makeup. As if to remind him this wasn't a date. The site was massive, 10 acres of cleared waterfront land that was supposed to become another luxury high-rise. But Damien hadn't broken ground yet. He handed her a hard hat. "What am I looking at?" "I'm canceling the project," he said. She blinked. "What?" "I'm donating the land." She stared at him like he'd grown horns. "To who?" "To the Lagos Wetlands Trust. It'll become a conservation park. Public space." Her mouth opened. Closed. Then, "You're serious?" "Yes." She shook her head slowly. "Why?" He hesitated. "I used to think legacy was about glass towers and magazine covers. But maybe it's also about choosing not to build. About leaving something untouched." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I didn't think you had that in you." He smiled faintly. "Neither did I." They walked the site in silence. When they reached the water's edge, she turned to him. "Do you know what scares me about you?" she asked. He looked at her. "You could change the world or destroy it. And I don't know which side you'll land on." He stepped closer. "I don't either. But I know this. I don't want to build anything if you're not part of it." She looked up at him, eyes searching. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I do." And for the first time since they met, she believed him. 2 months later in Abuja, the capital territory of Nigeria, the National Conference on Ethical Urban Development was the biggest platform of the year. All the major players were in attendance: ministers, NGOs, foreign investors. Vanessa was the keynote speaker. Damien sat in the front row. She delivered a blistering, brilliant speech about urban inequality, corruption, and the need for transparency. She called out shell companies, fake philanthropy, and developers who built shiny slums disguised as luxury. And even though he had once done all those things, she didn't spare him. Afterward, he approached her backstage. "I thought you might go easy on me," he said, smiling. "You thought wrong," she replied. "I did." She turned to walk away, but he caught her wrist gently. "Vanessa." She stopped. "I'm not trying to tame you," he said. "I don't want to dim what makes you fierce. I want to stand beside it. Or behind it, if that's what it takes." Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "Then prove it." 6 weeks later in Ikoyi, Lagos, Nigeria, Damien's boardroom looked different. Gone were the marble lions and gold-framed art. The table was still long and sleek, but now it held something more important than prestige. Blueprints for a new kind of development. Affordable, green, community-based, co-designed with Urban Nest. Vanessa sat at the head of the table, not as a guest, as a partner. The board had resisted, fought tooth and nail to kill the deal, but Damien didn't blink. He used his veto. He placed her at the center of his next legacy. And for once, it wasn't about ownership. It was about trust. After the meeting, they stepped out onto the terrace. "You really did it," she said quietly. "I told you I was learning." She smiled, slow and honest. The kind of smile that comes when two people realize they've crossed a battlefield together and survived. "So what now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "we build something that matters." 3 months later. It started with one project, then another, a wetland park in Ikoyi, Lagos. Then 3 more mixed-income estates in Surulere, Bariga, and Badagry. Every press release called it a surprising pivot for billionaire Damien Adeyemi. But those who watched closely knew it wasn't just strategy. It was evolution. The man who once built monuments to himself now built homes for others. And the woman who once refused to trust him, she still challenged him. Every day. And that's how he knew he'd finally met his match. Because love wasn't about surrendering power. It was about choosing not to use it. Thank you for watching. If you did not hit the subscribe button, please do that now to support and encourage us.